the
Nathan,
internet.
Oh my gosh. Okay, listen.
No,
I know you're curious.
I was searching around the Mom, scared, and my pants slipped down a little, and I was pulling them up.
Okay, Nathan, I'm sorry.
Mom, I'm telling the truth. I am serious.
Welcome back, amazing, beautiful human beings. Before we start, a little side note. As I'm seeing more YouTube channels being demonetized, terminated, blacklisted, if you get a chance, please go to WeAreChange.org and sign up on our email list to have a safe backup as I patiently wait here for the inevitable and very likely next attack on this YouTube channel by YouTube, Google, Alphabet, CIA, Monopoly, Corporatocracy. Moving forward, in this video, we're going to do what we always do and give you the news that's important to you and that actually matters. That, of course, you probably won't hear anywhere else because we're living in a day and age of mass misinformation and propaganda. And in today's video, we're going to talk about warmongers bankrupting this country, more saber rattling by Israel and Saudi Arabia, some important psychological lessons to learn from the latest U.S. Senator Ted Cruz news, as there's a bigger battle for the future of all wars right now at the U.S. Senate, plus a lot more. Now, as we're shooting this video, U.S. Senator Ted Cruz is trending worldwide on Twitter after Ted Cruz on his U.S. Senator Twitter account liked a pornographic video on Twitter without realizing that likes are public, and now everyone is going crazy. The official Pornhub Twitter account has even offered Ted Cruz a premium membership to their services, and personally, this issue and incident really has no effect on my life or really anyone else in the general public, and I kind of see it as a distraction, but there are some important lessons we could learn here. Number one is, no one is perfect. We all make mistakes, including a U.S. Senator, representative of the United States, who is a conservative and preaches traditional values, who boasts on his public Twitter account that he's a father of two, and who his wife is, that publicly liked a pornographic video on his Twitter account on 9/11. The second lesson being, what you resist persists. And for me, it shouldn't really be a big deal that he liked a pornographic video on Twitter, but people do see it as a big deal because this is the same Ted Cruz that defended a ban on dildos and other sex toys in Texas, with his legal team arguing that there was, quote, no right to stimulate one's genitals. And if you study psychology, you understand that what people hate the most in others is usually the shadow within themselves, as demonstrated wonderfully by our hypocritical political system, with incidents like this one with former Republican Senator Larry Craig, who, by the way, helped enact the military don't ask, don't tell policy, who was also known as an anti-gay marriage campaigner, who was caught soliciting sex from what he didn't know was an undercover male police officer in a public bathroom. And usually, if not in most cases, when someone is hating you because of the way you choose to live your life, or your sex, or your race, or your personal preferences or choices, I think it's important for a lot of people to understand that that person throwing that hate against you usually is doing it because of deep psychological rooted problems, fear and insecurity, and at times jealousy of what you have. And that's why an example for most people who are homophobic usually have homosexual feelings. And because people repress things and hold on to it, they actually build it up and make it bigger than it actually is. And that's why I think the world would be such a better place if we all would just stop judging people on what they do when it has no effect on us, and understand where it's coming from so we don't react negatively just with the same negativity that's brought onto us and continue this cycle of hate and fear, but a greater understanding of what actually makes someone hate. And that's why this article by this licensed therapist will be in the description below, and I definitely recommend you check it out. And you know, maybe possibly stop projecting your fear and anger onto other people. And that, of course, begins with not giving such a hard time to Ted Cruz, who, just for the official record right now, is blaming his staff member for this incident. Now, moving forward in actual, real important U.S. Senate news, we have U.S. Senator Rand Paul that just introduced a bill to give money to hurricane victims in the United States instead of, well, you know, foreign dictators, more specifically foreign aid. And no surprise there, that bill has been completely blocked by the Senate. But he brought up a very important point.
I'll give you a couple examples of what we spend our foreign aid on. We spent billions of dollars, I think it's over $100 billion, building roads in Afghanistan, blowing up roads in Afghanistan, building schools, blowing up schools, and then rebuilding all of them. Sometimes we blow them up, sometimes someone else blows them up, but then we always go back and rebuild them. Well, what about rebuilding our country?
Sounds like a common sense idea, but no. The bill is blocked. But Rand Paul right now is waging another war against, is raging another battle right now against endless wars. And he's trying to repeal the 16-year-old authorization for the use of military force, or the AUMF, which passed shortly after 9/11, that has allowed U.S. presidents to declare war without Congress, bomb a number of countries including Somalia, Syria, Yemen, and I could just keep going on, plus allowed the legal justification for the U.S. president to assassinate a U.S. citizen. It was already used to launch 37 military interventions on 14 different countries without congressional approval. And now Rand Paul is forcing a debate on this very important issue, almost standing alone on this issue that would have passed if it wasn't for his protest. He's bringing up very important points, like the fact that there's hypocrisy on both sides here, and the anti-war left demanding the end of wars is no longer present, and nor is the constitutional conservative right that used to demand Congress to reclaim its war powers. There's a helpful article by the anti-media that tells you about this situation and what you could do to help. That, of course, will be in the description below, well, you know, if you still believe in the political system. He has vowed to continue this protest, and most interestingly, the only significant press he's getting from this protest is from the online community. And what a shocker, not from the mainstream media. And personally, this is a very important issue to me, because if it wasn't for the AUMF, the president wouldn't be able to bomb, kill anyone he wants at any time without congressional approval. This law that Rand Paul wants to repeal has literally changed the landscapes of not only presidential powers, but international world events for the worse, ever since 9/11, which Rand Paul's father, Ron Paul, former congressman and presidential candidate, said previously before that 9/11 was used as a justification for passing the Patriot Act, which he noted that the extensive bill was written many years before the attacks actually occurred, and that 9/11 just provided an opportunity to implement the police state. That one event, 9/11, that introduced the AUMF, that introduced the Patriot Act, that introduced the current trajectory, horrible foreign policy that the United States is on, that many scholars, whistleblowers, professors, and experts say that the government's story about 9/11 does not add up and is literally bankrupting this country, where now today almost every penny of our income tax goes to supposed defense spending. Over 80% of the money you give to the US federal government goes directly towards the war industry and the security industry that is setting up a surveillance state. That, by the way, is being turned and used on you, the American citizen, as Edward Snowden even said, "Don't fear Trump, feared the surveillance state." And with all of that happening, the United States federal debt has just surpassed $20 trillion, and just in one day jumped over $317 billion after President Trump signed a spending and debt limit deal that will fund the government through December 8th. We are literally being bankrupted. We are being robbed. Our children's future will be in servitude because of this debt, all because of these meaningless wars that have been raging on for over 16 years now, that even the majority of our taxes are being spent on, and yet still put us at a bigger deficit. While the United States cozies up to despotic nations like Saudi Arabia and Israel, and both commit horrible foreign policy decisions together. The same Saudi Arabia that there's mounting evidence for is implicated with 9/11, along with American intelligence and Israeli intelligence, and we've been telling you about this unholy alliance between Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States for a very long time on this YouTube channel, and it's been pretty much made official with this latest breaking news of the Saudi crown prince just having a secret visit to Israel, even though Saudi Arabia officially does not recognize the Jewish state, and that the two supposedly do not have any diplomatic relations. And this is not a surprise for me, because for years now we've been documenting and telling you how Saudi Arabia, Israel, and the United States have not only a common enemy with Iran, but we're working together financing the rebel groups to get rid of the Iranian-linked Syrian government and Bashar al-Assad, to the point where these nations supported the rebel groups inside of Syria, knowing that they were radical Islamic terrorists, and helped the rise of al-Nusra and ISIS for their greater geopolitical goal of isolating Iran, which all of those three countries see as their common enemy. And we've been telling you this for a number of years now, and we've been accused of being fake news and conspiracy theorists, but now we're being vindicated as a top Israeli general just came out and admitted the greater truth behind Israel wanting a war with Iran. A top Israeli general tasked with writing his country's defense policy has admitted that Israel cannot take on Iran's military alone if the day should come that the regional powers face off in a direct military confrontation. He admitted, for Israel, terror groups like ISIS continue to be identified as a minimal threat. Instead, Israel's main focus tends to remain enveloped in an obsession with Iran. Currently, Iranian-backed militants are taking strategic areas of Syrian territory and may ultimately set up shop permanently on Israel's border, which led up to the events that we were talking about on this YouTube channel with the Israeli Prime Minister meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin. With those talks failing, Donald Trump sent Jared Kushner to Israel. We told you to look out for a very strong Israeli move. Then they actually went out and attacked Syrian government forces, and now they're colluding with Saudi Arabia even on a bigger level about the future of Syria, which now has a very strong influence with Iran and of course China and Russia that back them. And that's why this Israeli general said, quote, "We can achieve decisive victory over Hezbollah, and we don't need help from a single American soldier, but we cannot fight Iran alone," he said. "I consider future cooperation with the US much more important than anything we've had in the past. And that's why we're about to see the United States and Russia come face to face in Syria once again." That's why US President Donald Trump has said that he thinks the US will declare Iran non-compliant in our Iranian nuclear deal, which the nuclear watchdog chief even said Iran is playing by the rules. So yeah, of course, we're going to be keeping a very close eye on this situation and keeping you updated here on this independent news channel. Also, in other disastrous war news, more sanctions were passed on North Korea, making them double down on the threats against the United States. There's also massive demonstrations happening in Spain right now with hundreds of thousands of people turning out into the streets for Catalan National Day, as the people of Catalonia are calling for a break from the Spanish government and declaring that they will vote for their independence on October 1st, 2017. An event which I'm personally thinking about going myself and covering on the ground, and if you're interested in that, let me know. But yeah, that's the news for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this broadcast. If you found it informative, please share it with your friends and family members. And of course, don't forget to vote with your dollar, because the only thing keeping this independent, nonpartisan media organization who could go up against the corporatocracy and big government is you, and your help and your donations on wearechange.org/donate. Thank you so much for allowing me to do this job for you. I love you guys very much. Stay tuned for more content here on youtube.com/wearechange.